In this next session of today's event, we will explore how to achieve buy-in and build a step-by-step plan. Business leaders are currently mapping out their futures post-COVID-19 pandemic. Our panel of experts will discuss how to find the best route and vision for your company and how to achieve buy-in from your leaders on futuristic thinking. For this session, I'd like to welcome Dr. Chris Mullen. Chris is the Executive Director of the Workforce Institute at UKG, a leading workplace think tank focused on the frontline employee experience. I'd also like to welcome Deon Blyan, Director of Global Talent Development, People and Culture at Sunwing Travel Group in Toronto. And to round out this discussion, we have Vala Afshar, Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce. Welcome, Chris, Deon, and Vala. Thanks for joining us today.
Privilege to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcel.
Gentlemen, let's kick this off by discussing the appropriate way forward for business post-pandemic. So towards the future or back to the past, how do you advise finding the appropriate solution for your own company? Chris, let's start with you.
Well, great question, Marcel, and it's really not an easy one. Here's the good news. Many of you and your companies, you were made to pivot or change during this last year. It was talked about on the previous two presentations in the panel. So there is proof that it's doable, that this change, this pivoting, it's sustainable as well. My recommendation is both. First, we need and we want to assess the past year, asking questions: what worked, what didn't, what challenges did you overcome, or what challenges overcame you? And then second, where do you want to be in the future? So where are you now? Where do you want to be in the future? Creates a great gap analysis that then you can start to plan what you're going to do for the future and your way forward. But I think, with the pandemic and everything that's happening, it has shown that we can do it, but we have to take a look at the past and the future to move our path forward.
Thanks, Chris. What about you, Deon?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question, and I think the idea of having a step-by-step plan is maybe a bit of a high-minded thing, but I think it all kind of comes together as you're going through it. And I think for us, it's been important, I think, to really connect with the CEO and the executive committee and really find out where they feel the key focuses need to be. What are the priorities during this time? And then I think take the opportunity to reinforce those and message those priorities everywhere you can. I think there's an opportunity as well, to use those focuses to identify also opportunities for improvement, things that will strengthen the culture, and continue to use those as a frame for that picture of the future. And I think while doing that, it's likely that you'll sort of tap into also the strengths that exist in the organization today. So there's a number of things for us that, we're a very entrepreneurial focused organization, very resilient, very high tempo. And I think when we're able to tap into those strengths with our divisional and business and department leaders, that helps us really galvanize together and move forward as an organization, even in the multi-divisional, multinational way that we're set up today.
Thanks, Deon. And Vala, what about you? How do you advise finding the appropriate solution for your own company?
I think 2020 will forever be known as, the year of decentralization and digitization. The pandemic was, some argue, a 10-year accelerant in terms of cultural and digital transformation. If you looked at Canada in the beginning of March 2020, only 9% of workers were at home. By end of April, that number was 60%. And about 40% of Canadian workers are able to do their jobs at home. So to go from 9 to 60% in a 30, 45-day period is, again, some argue is a 10-year accelerant. So we've seen macro trends in terms of globalization, digitization, and now decentralization, a great dispersion in terms of, disrupting the supply chain between the producers and creators and end users, where you're optimizing for minimum friction, minimum cost and maximum value. And as Chris said, we've proven that we can do this. Many companies have had record performance over the last year during this incredibly difficult time. So, I think it's important to maintain a beginner's mindset. I don't think there are a lot of experts about tomorrow. What we've experienced was quite unique in the last year or so. And as our keynote speaker talked about, David Ulrich, I think you got to focus on creating value and creating value at the speed of need. So how do you design your workplace? How do you recruit, retain talent? How do you incentivize? And he mentioned system thinking and system design. How do you design systems for jobs to be done versus legacy processes or existing skill sets? You really have to, I think it's a superpower now if you can learn, unlearn, relearn, and change yourself. If you can do that, I think you position yourself to stay relevant in this new normal.
Yeah, great comment, Vala. I want to drill down as practically as possible here. So what do these futuristic solutions look like from a practical point of view? And can you speak from your experience in implementing some of these options? Deon, I know that Sunwing's done much right now in terms of transformation. Maybe you can begin.
Sure. Thanks, Marcel. Yeah, and great points. I really appreciate those points from Chris and Vala. I think for this, it's for us, it's been about understanding and re-understanding that, we have a diverse group of leaders. Those diverse individuals are going to have diverse perspectives, strengths, and opportunities. And from a people and culture department standpoint or HR department standpoint, we felt it's been important to meet those leaders where they are. So to take the time, to actually have conversations with them about specific actions that are being taken and realize that every one of those interactions is an opportunity to pave the way forward with them individually, and then continue to have a consistent message, in larger audiences that tie that together. Again, I think there's an opportunity in each of these interactions to introduce, some of the elements of that future picture of that, the future state that we want to get to and what those key focuses are that were determined by our CEO and his executive committee. So I think there's a great opportunity to, if we're talking about business continuity planning, if we're talking about talent retention planning, we've taken the approach of actually scheduling meetings with the department or divisional leader and just talking through the rationale around that, what that looks like, how that connects to the next 3 or 4 months, how that connects further on to that, and how that may be a new practice for the organization as well. I think that it's important, and we've made it important to preview a lot of our messaging to our VPs and our executive committee before going to the broader audience of our organization with those messages, asking for input, asking for feedback, being open to that, and also just ensuring that we hold space with those leaders to ask more questions about why is this the focus, and if they don't understand or they're not quite on board with it yet, having a bit of time with them to bring them along in that journey.
Thanks. Chris, what about you? Anything you can share from the Workforce Institute or UKG?
Yeah, prior to my life at UKG, I was a 15-year practitioner of HR and I was director of HR. And so there's a lot of these different examples, but from a UKG standpoint, during a pandemic, we're in the midst of a merger. We used to be Ultimate Software and Kronos. So we're also going through a lot of this from a merger perspective. Deon speaks a lot about the communication, which, to me is a great point. Before that, I like to speak a lot about trust. I was giving a presentation earlier this morning on this very topic, that companies, trust is not as tangible as we want it to be, right? It's not widgets, but trust, we cannot neglect it. And in this day and time, we need to spend the time to build that trust. So from a UKG perspective, we talk about this, our CEO talks about it quite a bit. I really liken it to how effective are your managers? And so for us, one of the practical things that we do is every manager a couple times a year gets rated from their employees, from the teams that they run on a variety, it's about 19 questions about not just them as a manager, but how they're doing, communicating the information from the company, to Deon's point. And I think, and to the panel before, our managers, we didn't become managers, right? We were good at making widgets. We were good at doing what our jobs were as individual contributors. Then we became managers. And while the training that we're given makes sense when we're going through it, coaching is a vital part of the manager experience that I don't know that many companies are doing right now. And so how do we continue from an HR standpoint to coach not just train, but coach our managers so that our employees can have a wonderful experience? So I think that's some of the practical ways we should be implementing for the future, is how good can our managers, how great can our managers be to make the employee experience even better, because then that will translate into the customer experience.
Thanks, Chris. Vala, do you have a quick comment there? Anything to add?
I want to just double down on the trust and communication. There is a significant trust deficit. And again, our keynote speaker alluded to a health crisis, an economic crisis, racial inequality crisis, climate, mass dissemination of misinformation at the highest levels of leadership, all happening at the same time. So, and of course, and mental health is health. So, when you think about what our employees, our stakeholders, customers, partners have had to go through, it's critically important for business leaders to understand that trust has to be number one core value, in my opinion. And that means leaders must trust that the employees are working towards desired outcomes of the business, and employees want to know that their employers trust that they're working hard and their work matters. And communication, at my company since first week of March 2020, every week we've had all hands employee meetings. This is where our company founders, senior executives, and board members, I was actually surprised that our board members from meeting one to this week's meeting for every week attend. And what we see, this is a 55,000 person company dialing into these all hand meetings, incredible level of radical transparency. We don't have to share all the details about everything, but we do have to explain our rationale when we make big decisions. And when you see your founders and board members engaged in those conversations, that's just, it's awesome. And it really demonstrates trust. So trust and communication, again, what Deon and Chris said, I just want to double down on it. I think it's critically important as we move forward.
And I think this brings it all together. So if you're considering what your work from home or bringing people back to the office, what all three of us have talked about is a good example. You need trust, you need communication. And as Vala pointed out, they need to come together, and you need to explain why you made the decisions you do. Not everyone has to like it, but they should have a good idea of how you came to that. That's being transparent, and that's trustful. Great job.
Great points, guys. Let's move towards strategies on achieving buy-in among leadership and teams as you implement some of these changes for the future. Vala, going back to you here, what types of employee demands are emerging as a result of the work from anywhere mindset? And how do you align these with employer needs around productivity, innovation, continual improvement?
Yeah, and we've seen a shift in terms of demand from the beginning of the pandemic to present day. Early on, we saw only 1 in 5 employees wanted to return to the office. And more recently, it's 3 out of 4 want to have a hybrid. First panel mentioned a hybrid model. I totally agree with that. I think it's adopting a culture first, policy second mindset. You really want to intentionally engage and transform the new workspace with all stakeholders in mind. Today we have at Salesforce 22 offices opened around the globe, but our Toronto office is not scheduled to be open until July. Because we're taking a science approach in terms of using technology and redesigning the space where there is social distancing, use of technology to measure health and safety of our stakeholders. Today safety is a brand pillar. You really have to ensure your stakeholder safety. And I think about our big office in San Francisco, 68 floors. At any given time, you can have 40, 50 people in an elevator. So even designing how to use an elevator and your lobby and your hoteling space is critical in terms of the future. I think one thing we've learned in my company, fortunate to be in the tech sector where a vast majority of the employees at my company can do their jobs remotely. In fact, I would say almost 100%. Our headquarters has been the cloud for the last year. It's not the beautiful office in Boston or New York or San Francisco or Chicago. And so this hybrid model will point to, again, designing your future workspace for movement. The reason we could move 55,000 employees to work from home literally over a weekend, that speed can only be achieved if you design for movement. And we're a cloud-first company, so all our business applications are in the cloud. I think that's something to think about when you think about designing your workspace. Is it designed for movement? Can you work from anywhere, achieve success from everywhere? And that really has to be part of your mindset moving forward.
Thanks. Yeah, you mentioned the cloud, Deon. I know your offices are in a different type of cloud, so I'm curious if this question would relate to you in a different way, perhaps. I'm curious to your perspective on the work from anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we have hotels and resorts, we have an airline, we have destination management, transportation facilities, and we have a number of office-based employees as well. So I think, I mean, for us, from the perspective of the employees that are unable to work from home, I think the demand comes in the form of a need for recognition and acknowledgement. I think certainly the safety through the ongoing pandemic is paramount for those employees as well. Just the need for PPE, the need for cleanliness protocols, the need for support from the organization if and when anybody contracts the virus, and how that's all of that is done. The need for flexibility to get vaccinated, all of that kind of stuff, I think, is a big deal. I think on the side of where employees are able to work from home, there's this interesting spectrum where I think, at one end, you have employees that feel it's so lucky and I'm actually not spending any money on gas or on public transportation or lunch every day. And I feel like I almost got a raise because now I just wake up at home and I'm working at home. And so I'm happy. And then there's, another end of that spectrum where employees feel, well, you should be paying me more because I'm using my own resources and infrastructure at home, and you should give me a budget to get a desk and, all of that. So I think there's a need to kind of, find where the organization can support or is required to support on those ends. So I would say, maybe to cap my answer off, is that there's a high demand for, again, clarity of communication. There is such a disconnect between now emails and chats coming in and messaging coming in electronically, where an employee is not able to just stand in somebody's doorway and get clarification, or shout across the hallway to get clarification on what does this mean, or this is a policy now, or whatever. And so I think that's a very important thing that is, I think we're seeing as a high demand, clarity of communication.
Thanks, Deon. Chris, quick comment to wrap that one up.
Yeah, I won't belabor the hybrid because I believe that's where we're going with this. But I do think there's a differentiation between those who can work from home and those who need presence is required for them to work. And I don't think we should neglect or forget them. To me, my philosophy has always been it's equitable versus equal. How do we make it equitable for those who have to be present to work? So think of different ways. Can they choose their shifts? Can they shift swap? From a safety perspective, what part of their job, if any, can they do from home? So maybe there's enough work that they could do one day. But there's all these things I think we need to think about. It needs to be individualistic, and companies who trust their employees and want the best for them, they'll develop something that works for everyone. But I agree, it should not be, Vala, you said culture first, policy second. Do not put a policy in place that just broad brushes and forgets everyone. No one's happy with that.
Thanks, guys. Before we move on, I do want to remind the audience that we do hope to have a live Q&A here pretty shortly. So if you have a question, just type it into the Q&A tab and we'll do our best to get to them. But just back to our discussion, I'll go back to you, Deon. Once you've decided on your way forward as a company, How do you advise achieving critical buy-in from both your leaders and your teams, or either or?
Yeah, I mean, so I think I mentioned it earlier too. I think that the way forward is decided as you're moving forward. And so I think, we've often used the phrase, we're paving the road as we're driving on it. So I think that things continue to come into focus as you keep moving forward. And again, often it's with that vague picture off in the distance that we're trying to get clearer on. But I think it's important to take that story and continue to thread it through, communications and information materials. Any of the regular cultural practices in the organization should be embedded or somehow saturated in that information. And it's a way to bring people along again on that journey. We at the very beginning of the pandemic in our office environment, we were very non-work from home oriented. We were a pretty traditional approach to that. And thankfully, we had the tools to be able to quickly transition in a 3-day period to a remote operation. And what that did is it actually created an opportunity for us to be connected more as a multi-divisional, multinational organization than we had ever been able to in the past. So we immediately began monthly leader sessions. And so this is a group of 100 plus leaders across the Caribbean, across Mexico, across Canada and the US, that we were always wanting to get together in the same room before that we couldn't do. And so we were immediately able to do that through using Microsoft Teams. We implemented an electronic newsletter. We implemented some town hall events. We started really ramping up regular communications. And it was important for us to, again, thread that story through and start seeding in, more images of that picture of the future, where we're trying to get, what those focuses are. I mentioned earlier that the CEO and the executive committee sort of steered us in that direction. And then we started, painting that picture and bringing those pieces together and using all of those different channels and venues for that.
Thanks. Vala, what's your take on achieving critical buy-in?
I can't believe I'm going to do a plug for my CEO's book, but I am. Over my shoulder, you may be able to see a book, Trailblazer, authored by Mark Benioff. And in the book, he talks about how we build alignment at our company. And this is the exact process we used right at the beginning of the pandemic. The process is called V2MOM process. It's 5 components. The letters V, first is vision. So what do you want to achieve? The second letter is values. What's important to you? Then M is methods. How do you get it? How do you get it? Obstacles, which is what is preventing you from being successful, and then measures. How do you know when you have it, when you've achieved success? So vision, values, methods, obstacles, and measures. And so we immediately developed our V2MOM. And this is a cascade down process where the founder has the all hands meeting, our founders, our executive team, and they draft their V2MOM. It's typically a couple of day exercise, and we're all witnessing it, some in person, some remote. In this case, it was all remote because it was done at the beginning of the pandemic in March. And then every individual in the company, all 55,000 full-time employees, have 90 days to develop their personal V2MOM, vision, values, methods, obstacles, and measurements. What's incredibly important is that I can look up any employee, any colleague of mine, from the founder to a new hire that just came on board 90 days ago, and I can see his or her V2MOM. So I can see their definition of success, their goals, their obstacles. It's an amazingly transparent way to establish alignment. And I think of all the things that my company has done over the last 21 years in terms of innovation, technology, new business models, this, that, and the other, the secret sauce, in my humble opinion, is this V2MOM process, which is very lightweight, very powerful, but more importantly, accessible to everyone in the company. And that's how we started our journey in terms of building alignment to address the changes we needed for the pandemic.
Yeah, Chris, I'll let you wrap that one up. Any further comments on achieving critical buy-in?
Yeah, the one thing that I would just point out is for folks out there that have done what Deon and Vala have talked about is don't forget to have a great executive leader or sponsor buy into what you're doing. That is really important. It's helped me throughout my career when I've done positive change for organizations, is having that sponsor, someone who is intimate knowledge of either the founders or the executive council, can really be a great asset and advocate for you.
Thank you, guys. We have a few minutes left, and then we're hoping to move into a live Q&A at 3 o'clock. So I'll ask one more question here, and I'll go back to you, Chris. I want to touch on building the step-by-step plan for the way forward. What advice would you give, Chris, to leaders in regards to putting together a practical framework for the future in a way that protects their unique culture?
Yeah, I mentioned a little bit earlier, but to me, a lot of it comes down to your leaders and your people managers. They dictate your unique culture. Your CEOs can talk about it all they want. If the management and leadership don't buy in and don't disseminate that, whether it's through trust or communication, it's really difficult. So spending a good amount of time training and coaching your managers is a really important asset. And that's my advice to the leaders, is to, really coach them up. Because as a leader, it's not just your job, it's your duty to understand your workforce. It's your duty, to help the individuals in your workforce thrive. And we know a lot of people leave organizations due to their managers. They come for the organization, they leave because of their managers or leaders. And so I think we really need a mechanism to measure our leaders. But that doesn't mean we get rid of them if the measurements aren't that good. How do we train and coach and get them to be the best they can be? To me, that's some of the secret sauce as well when you're talking about a step-by-step plan for this, because any change, you can come up with anything you want. If the leaders and the managers aren't on board and don't disseminate it or communicate it or build that trust for you, it's really hard no matter what the CEO says.
Thank you, Chris. Deon, you've experienced this. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I really love what Dr. Mullen said there, and I would echo that. I think it's, the idea of culture. I think the more that we can articulate the key elements of that culture to those leaders and let them know their responsibility and how they can impact that, I think the more success we can have with implementing change or leading change while strengthening that culture. We actually use what I like to call our culture equation. And what it is really just an image on a slide, similar to what Dave Ulrich showed earlier, but borrowed from a gentleman named Dr. John Izzo, who wrote a book called The Purpose Revolution. And we really like to articulate that, values plus employee experience plus purpose equals culture. And then that culture drives performance and results. And so I think when you're able to really articulate for leaders and really impress upon leaders and inspire them around the things that they can do that are influenced by or drive behaviors for or articulate clearer for their people, how that all fits together in that employee experience piece, I think that's where we're able to move things forward in a galvanized and a way that strengthens culture and doesn't create counterculture or pull away from that, especially in times of chaos, in times of crisis, where that's our stabilizing factor.
Thanks. And Vala, I'll let you close that one off.
I speak to a lot of executives who honestly at the beginning of the pandemic didn't know if they could be as productive, if they could be able to delight their stakeholders in this decentralized digital construct. So it was a learning experience, and many have changed their opinions. So, it's important to stay teachable and again, have that beginner's mindset. I also think that, work from anywhere is going to be a new war for talent. I think that the research shows 1 in 4 employees are planning to change their jobs because of their employers changing policies. 1 in 2 employees expect their employers to let them down and change their flexible work from home policies when we get to a safer space. So, I think it's, important to understand that if your job is no longer a function of location or time, and that you're not going to define your culture based on proximity or perks. Oh, I have in-service dry cleaning and ping pong table and delicious food. That doesn't matter, or it hasn't in the last year and a half. So the changing behavior, culture, ability, and flexibility to work from home, spend time with your kids, have that work-life balance. That's why I think the hybrid model is important. So, leaders really need to think about, are you going to be able to recruit, retain best talent if you don't have flexible policies? So measure outcomes. Again, for us privileged few, where we don't have physical dependency in terms of the work we do, we're looking for employers to provide flexibility and maintain that trust and reciprocity in terms of value and quality of work and life.
Yeah, you're spot on. I left a job before years ago for that very reason, because I was allowed to work from home 1 day a week because it was an hour and a half each way. It provided me with flexibility. And when my supervisor, who wanted me to work from home and allowed it, said the people above her did not want me to work from home anymore, butts in seats. And I was the HR director. And I said, okay, tell me what part of my job I'm not doing well. And she said, wow, you respond quicker when you're at home. You have less meetings. You're more productive. I said, okay, so what's the issue? They just don't want you. And then I had to say, you know what my PhD research is on, right? Work-life balance and the use of mobile technology. I spent 9 years studying this. And they still were like, no, they want your butt here. And I'm like, great, I'm leaving. I'm going to be looking for a new job. It wasn't a threat. I was just saying our values don't match anymore. And I think that's the wave that's about to come. If people think that we have to put butts in seats, there are benefits for people being together, but there's also benefits for the flexibility. I think people want this hybrid model.
Mhm.
Thank you, guys. We're going to move to a live Q&A here, and we do have some questions trickling in from the audience. And I'll pitch this first one to you, Chris, because I think it builds off what you've just shared. Can you offer your insights about the fear of expressing oneself fully in terms of needs or emotions for it potentially having an impact on one's job security? How can we ensure employees feel safe speaking up?
Yeah, I think that's a really good barometer on if your employees feel like they can speak up, if they can tell you the hard truths. I know for a lot of the projects I had done through Change, I went right to the front lines to the employees to get the feedback that I really needed to hear of what was working and what wasn't. I think as a leader and a manager, you'll know when they'll tell you the truth and when they're not giving you the whole truth. I am someone who likes to cultivate a relationship of trust with the team members, my colleagues, so that they can tell me really like it is. My feelings aren't going to be hurt because if I've built that relationship, I know it's coming from a place, I said this earlier, it's coming from like a place of love, where we all want to do better. And we spend a lot of our time together. So let's be respectful about it. But you do have to be conscious if you are the employee telling your fears or the hard truths, you have to gauge that manager. If people have me as their manager, it's fine. Just say it like it is. I come from the East Coast of the United States, from a hard city of Philadelphia. I'm good with the truth, right? In fact, you'll know the truth for me because I wear it on my face and I say it out loud all the time. But I'm still respectful and done in a kind manner. It can be done. My hope is that people have managers like that.
Thanks, Chris. Deon, I'll pose this next question to you. Maybe you can speak from your experience, but how do you ensure high levels of customer service and keeping the customer at the heart of the operations through this time?
Yeah, I think for us, it's not difficult because I think our organization is so built around being customer centric. It's one of our core values as an organization. Our purpose statement is passionate people making vacation dreams come true. So all of our divisions are connected to that customer's experience. Whether it's booking on our website, flying on our airplane, riding in our vans from the airport to the resort, enjoying our resort. So I think, and we're privileged to be a part, one of our divisions is the Blue Diamond Resorts, Hotels and Resorts Division. And they are, some of the most dedicated hotel professionals I've ever worked with in my life that are just, so interested in going above and beyond to ensure that the employee's experience is certainly that vacation dream. So it's for us, it's been like that's been the oxygen and the fuel for the organization, and it's been taken away. And so I think that the employees in the organization, that's one of the things they miss the most, is being able to fulfill that dream for our customers. And so for us, it hasn't been about staying focused on that. It's been about trying to keep people motivated for the momentum of when we're going to be able to do that again.
Thanks, Deon. Vala, this one might be for you. Someone asks, what about employees who are not disconnecting from work? Some team members are slipping from work anywhere to work all the time and ignoring their own work-life balance. Any thoughts there?
I think that's probably true for most of us. I don't know the difference between Tuesday and Saturday, to be honest with you. I think that if to me, success is liking yourself, liking what you do and how you do it. So if you're fortunate enough to work for a company you love, people that you enjoy being around, even if it's virtual, it feels like play, to be honest with you. So I'm in such a happy place. So, I don't care if, Wednesday and Sundays look the same, because to be honest with you, I enjoy my work. So maybe that's a lesson there. Don't compromise. I found, to be honest with you, after years of working, the job security is knowing you can work elsewhere. So develop the skills that other employers are looking for, and ensure that you're adding value by measuring outcomes, not just effort, so that you know that you're adding value. It's like David, our keynote speaker, said, ask yourself, did I add value to my customer or my colleague or my partner today? And if a day, a week, a month goes by and you really honestly can't answer that question, you need to change. You need to change your habits, and it's habits are the biggest influence in life. So it's a roundabout way of answering. Work-life balance to me has been work-life integration, especially since I'm in my dining room right now talking to you, and this is where I've been for the last 13 months. So you work for, I think working for a good boss. I think as you get older, you appreciate working for a good boss. And Dr. Mullen talked about love. It's Jack Ma who said, to have respect and success in business, you need EQ, IQ, and LQ. It's emotional and love quotient. You love what you do, love the people you serve, and so on and so forth. So find passion, find work that you're good at. And, I think it may stress you a little bit less if you find yourself working beyond the boundaries of 9 to 5. I think those time boundaries are gone, to be honest with you. So you need to be mindful and make sure you maintain the physical, mental wellness, that you need to be productive. It was John Wooden who said, go fast, but don't hurry, famous UCLA basketball coach. So there's a balancing act there, but to be honest with you, I think we're all struggling with it. I find myself working every day, to be honest with you.
I'll say I have a whole keynote on work life, and actually I go into why work-life balance is a myth and a lie. Work-life integration is way too much. Like you said, no boundaries, no borders. In my dissertation, I posed the term work-life negotiation. So it takes into account our own, what season of life we're in, whether or not I have kids or don't have kids. Because I would contend that if you're taking a meeting at a kid's soccer game, you're not at either. You're not doing either. So my practical advice would be for everyone out there, examine your life domains, all the different categories. I'll put a link in there. I have a free assessment that people can just go that I use, and I have my 5 top tips on there. And so I'll provide that to everybody, because I do believe what Deon and Vala have said. There's no boundaries, and we need to maybe get some back, because some people are in their dining room, right? I at least have an office where I can shut the door, but we've got to figure this out. Otherwise, it just becomes all encompassing.
Send me that link, Dr. Mullen. Send it.
Guys, on that note, we have reached time. So I want to thank each of you for joining us. What an excellent conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Marcel.